in Parashat Mitzorah says, Zot tieh Torat HaMitzorah, this is the law of the Mitzorah, which is a person who had not leprosy, but that's how they call it, but this sara'at, which is whatever that disease was in the time of, the biblical time, so to speak, b'yom tahorato, on the day of his purification, v'huval hakohen. And then it says, he brings a bunch of sacrifices, okay? Now, what in the world does this have to do with anything? We learned these chapters of Tazria and Mitzorah, which is the two chapters that we read together even this year. It seems kind of irrelevant because there was Sara'at in the time in those days, but not now. So it's like, what does it have to do with anything? What is it teaching us? Okay, there's lessons maybe, but two chapters that have nothing to do with the world, it's like we kind of dismiss them. When a darshan, someone who's giving a speech, he gets to these chapters, he dreads it. It's like, what am I going to talk about? There's nothing relevant about today. So he gets into the Lashon Hara and things like that. But the truth is, it's very relevant. Let me show you what these chapters have to do with. You know what Sara'at is? Well, let me show you. It says here, it says the man who has to go into exile. It says Badad Yeshev in Tazria. Okay, he has to go into exile. Badad Yeshev. Where do we know those words from? Those words sound familiar?
No.
Where? Badad Yeshev. Don't we say when we sit on the floor, when we're reading Eicha on Tisha B'Av, the first three words of Eicha is Eicha, how Yasheva Badad. How is it we're sitting alone? Or that the city of Jerusalem is sitting alone? Meaning God left it, we're alone. But what does that mean? We're alone. But this guy who had the tzarat, he's alone. He has to sit alone too. So what's happening is, we're realizing that the whole exile of 2,000 years is a tzara'at on us. That's what this exile is. Didn't he have to go to exile? The man who had tzara'at, or the person? Because Miriam also. She had to stay behind. There's an exile. When a person has sara'at on them, they go to exile and they sit alone. Same thing with us. When we sinned and we got into a level of sin that was so bad, we got sara'at on us. We just don't see it, but it's somehow on us. And it's causing us to also live alone, be alone and be exiled from the land for 2,000 years. So this whole story of sara'at is really our story. It's the story of Galut. All we're waiting to do is get this sarat off of us and we're back home. This is what the story is about. This is very relevant. In fact, when it says Zot Torat HaMitzorah, or it says Hatzara'at at the end, when it says Hatzara'at, if you take that word Hatzara'at, it's the same word as Etzara, a time of trouble. Right? Etzara. Hatzarat. Because in Eitzara is a time of trouble, which they categorize really that phrase, which is from the prophets. Ve'etzara hi Yaakov, it is a time from trouble. Umimena yivasher, and from it we will be saved. That's really talking about the exile. So the exile is really a state of tzarat, and we're waiting to get out of it. When do we get out of it? Do you know that getting out of it is called Biyom Tahorato, the day of his purification? You know what we call Parashat Mitzorah? Tahor. If you look sometimes in the calendars, it's called Parashat Tahor. Right. Purifying, purification. It's the big Tahara, that word, remember well. Tahara, the purification, is when the tzarat is off. Okay? Now this word, the Chida, you know the Chida, it's a very great man who lived. He had a grandfather. And he wrote a book, the Chesed LaAbraham. Okay, it's a famous book, you can get it. He explained something fascinating about a tahara, a purification stage. And he said like this. We know when you think of tahara, that one of the ways to become tahor, men or women, is to jump into a mikveh. the water. That is something that brings purification. So he saw like this. When the world will reach, because it says in a pasuk in the Navi, which I don't want to go find it now, that Hashem is the mikveh of Israel. Okay? Hashem is the mikveh of Israel. Which means when we kind of jump into Hashem, so to speak, we're all going to be pure. And it's going to be time of the tahara where the tzarat will leave us. Also, one more thing just to clinch it. What causes tzarat? Mainly Lashon Hara. And we always say, what causes the galut of 2,000 years? Lashon Hara. So look how the two come together. Lashon Hara and tzarat and the galut. So it's all the same story. That's what's going on here. We're in a state of tzarat. Now, Hashem is the mikveh of Israel. So the Chesed Abraham says like this. If you notice the measurements of the mikveh, okay, whatever there is, there's 40 se'ah and whatever the measurements are, but when it comes down to smaller increment measurements, I think they're the beitzah, but I'm not sure exactly, I think it is, it comes out that there is 5760 measurements in a mikveh. Okay, 5760. Now that sounds like a year, if you put it like that, 5760, and the truth is it is. Right now we're in year 5772, okay, which is 2012. 5760, 60 from 72 is 12 years ago, you see at the zero. So it means if we're 2012, it means 2000, year 2000 was 5760. So what does he say? And this was, you know, a lot of rabbis were talking about this at the time because it was the big talk of the year 2000.
Right.
You know, everyone's thinking Mashiach's coming. It's the year 2000, and it's even from the Goyim angle they thought so, which was interesting because Hashem had everybody from all angles buzzing about the year 2000. He says since 5760 is the measurements of the mikveh, it means when the year 5760 comes around, the world will emerge out of that mikveh pure, and we would have reached the purity, the state of tahara. The state of tahara is the ending of the tzarat leaving. But there's one problem. What's the problem? That date came and passed. But it's not a problem. I'm going to show you how it still fits. Okay, now let me just go on an aside for maybe 2-3 minutes, and I'll get back to show you how. I learned from somebody. Okay, this is something that's been in many people's minds, especially mine. It's a very sensitive issue now. It's been seen in the world that there's been common, or should I say uncommon, God forbid, deaths that we've been seeing. Okay? Young, old, this one, that one, some family members of communities. It's like something strange has been going on in the last bunch of years. It's not, and people have been saying this. You hear them in funerals, again, God forbid. But you hear that it's like there's something odd about the deaths these last few years. Okay, without getting into it, it seems like the pure people are going, because you always hear how they were so good and this and that. It's like, what's going on? Like, why are these good people leaving? Again, some young, old, and you see stories in the news, even the global stories, the non-global stories. For instance, Rabbi Abu Chatzera and the young boy, that was murdered. I'm just saying, these were global events. But not only those were global events, but even in people's communities, you notice there's just, certain deaths that kind of don't make sense. Like, why did this happen? And even if someone was 70 years old, like some Rabbanim, 70, 80, even 90, whatever it is, it still was strange. It was like, still, why now? Why this? It's just something strange seems to be going on. So here's what I heard. And I heard it, I kind of believe it. It's just someone's theory. Because we're in the end of time, and we're in a state where the world is against us. You have this nation and that nation, Iran, and this one, and in Israel, everything going ready to get us, like from all sides. Like the sheep with the 70 wolves, ready to eat. We need zichuyot, which means merit. Okay, we need merit. So someone was telling me, when someone passes away, their prayers are more effective than when they're here. So what am I saying? Here's what could be happening. Because of the dire circumstances that we're in very hot water and big trouble, Hashem is forming a small army of the righteous, pure souls, and up there, they're praying for us. It's almost like a little hidden, army, like I said, that Hashem is bringing together, because they're now praying for this world and for the Jewish people. And we will get out of the mess, but we're going to get out of the mess because of that. So all these deaths have a reason. They're really there. Those people are there to help Israel. It's something big that's really going on. It is strange, and we wonder, why is this happening? This could be why it's happening, and it's at the uppermost secrets of Hashem's plans. This is not something known, or who really is what, and what's up next that they have to pray for it. But that's why you notice the pure souls are going. Like if you see again, like I said, when you hear some of the speeches about the people that passed away, the Niftarim, such special souls, pure souls, like not the rabbis, not that the rabbi, but the rabbis are needed here because I have to teach. But what are these pure souls all going up for? There has to be something in common with them. It's that they're the pure, special souls, and they can do a number on us with their prayer. That's really what's going on. How does this in the world fit with what I said now about the tzara'at? Very nicely. Look at this. Let's say the Chesed Avraham, who we're not going to assume a rabbi like that is wrong, because he's who he is. And it does make sense. 5760 was the mikveh year. How can it go without anything happening? But the tzara'at is still there. No, actually, I'm saying the galut is still there. So I'm thinking maybe this is what's happening. Maybe this is what's happening. Could it be that the tzara'at is off in the year 2000, but there's still sacrifices to bring? That's the next step. It could be that these next few years was the sacrifices of the tzara'at. So that didn't finish yet. But when that finishes, and hopefully it should finish this year in 2012/13, because that's also in the Zohar, like I mentioned, it could be 13 years, God willing, of sacrifices, and now we're really done with the Tahara stage, and the Mashiach will really come.